When you win in the opener, what's the biggest key to making sure the momentum from that game carries over into week two instead of you guys maybe getting too high or too far ahead of yourselves?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just focusing on your next opponent. We're playing an opponent that won last week. We're facing an opponent that is a good football team. So again, reality comes back very quickly. We talked a little bit this morning about the win. We talked about we talked about the game, the things that we did that were all positive. We talked about Ryan Kerrigan winning his first ever Defensive Player of the Week award. And then I told him, hey, I'm changing the slide. Now we're going forward to our new opponent. And that's hopefully what we did was we put it behind us now and we're going forward.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, you've talked about Jerron Christian as an athletic, smart player. He just hadn't played a lot of football. I guess when you watch his tape or when you're thinking about his development this season, what specifically are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for improvement. When you watch the first quarter and a half, he didn't play very well, neither did Wes Martin. You watch the rest of the game, and they both bowed their necks and stepped up and played much better. I saw all the reports about how poorly they played. Well, they didn't play very well at the beginning of the game. I think it might have been jitters. But as we watched them progress and we watched the middle of the second quarter all the way to the rest of the game, they came out and played some pretty good football from that point on. So hopefully they'll continue that trend and they'll both they'll both get better and better. And as I said, to me, the biggest thing with those guys is really just seeing improvement. We want to see every time they get on the football field, every snap they take is better than the previous one.
Other than the mandated NFL protocols, how will you change your road trip this week in terms of travel just to kind of smooth things out?
Well, the tough part obviously is we're going to Arizona, so we're going to go a day earlier than we normally do. So we'll leave Friday. We'll be in quote unquote our own bubble there at the hotel. We'll stick to the protocols as mapped out by the league, and we'll play on Sunday and fly back.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, I'm curious, going up against you guys faced a mobile quarterback last week in Carson Wentz, facing a different kind of mobile quarterback this week. What is the challenge for pass rushers against a guy like Kyler Murray?
Keeping him in the pocket. I mean, he's such an elusive guy. He gives me anxiety. So, what you want to do is you want to keep a guy like that in the pocket. You want to keep that guy contained. You don't want to give him an opportunity to extend plays. With his athleticism and his arm, he can make plays. And, one of the things that we've looked at is that his ability to scramble and create downfield. You've got to keep that young man contained. You've got to keep him hemmed up, and you can't allow him to get outside the pocket.
How big a challenge is that? Because that's a hard thing to do.
It's a very big challenge, but it can be done. I mean, he's a heck of a football player. We know who he is as a football player. He's a very dynamic young man who's got a tremendous skill set, and we've got to be able to do our job. Because if we don't, obviously the worst thing could happen is to lose.
Thank you.
Hi, Ron. What did you notice in the Cardinals game about how they were able to basically offset the 49ers defensive front? Because obviously, similar to you guys, they have a lot of guys that can get after the quarterback. But what did you see from them and how they were able to neutralize that component?
Well, I think a lot of it was quick throws, quick hitting plays. They ran the ball fairly well. I should say fairly well. They ran the ball well enough to keep them off balance. But a lot of throws were quick. They got the ball out of his hands. And I do believe he ran the ball 11 times for 100 yards or something like that, too, as a quarterback. So that keeps you off balance, and that's what I mean. Is, if they keep him contained, don't let him rush for that kind of yardage and for a touchdown, they got a chance to win that football game.
How do you then offset those quick throws? I mean, stuffing the run is one thing, but how do you offset the quick throws and things of that nature so that you guys can sort of do what you all want to do?
Well, do your job. I'm not going to get into specifics on stuff like that because that's game planning stuff, Reid. But you've got to do your job.
Thank you, Ron.
Ron, in your opinion, what allows Ryan Kerrigan to still be as effective as he is? 140 games into his career?
He's a true pro. I mean, the way he works at his game, the way he works at his craft, studies his craft, prepares, the way he takes care of his body. I mean, there's no secret that there's a number of guys that have played double-digit years, and when you ask people, describe what that guy is, I promise you, they all probably say he's a true pro. He understands what it takes to prepare each week, to play physically and mentally, and because he does that, he has success. Secondly, he's also a guy that understands his role. He's a proud player. He wants to play. But he also understands that when I get an opportunity, I got to make the most of it. And that's what we saw from Ryan on Sunday. He got an opportunity. What do you have, 25 snaps or something like that? very productive. Very, very productive. I mean, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, and a fumble recovery. That's making the most of your opportunities.
Thanks.
Is David on? If not, I'll go. All right, I'll go. Okay, I'll go. You talked about the defensive line. Actually, Cliff Kingsbury said that your D-line gave him anxiety too. So you guys kind of both use the same terms. But was there anything that even surprised you? You know, again, knowing the talent on paper, knowing what these guys can do. Is there anything that surprised you on Sunday, or maybe what impressed you the most from your D-line?
I think the thing that really, you know, as I go back and look at the game, you know, I always talk about the first quarter and a half. We didn't play very well. There were a lot of things that we missed, opportunities we missed, some undisciplined play that was disappointing, you know, some penalties that we created that we have no business doing. I mean, you know, that's probably the thing that surprised me more than anything else. I mean, we've got some talented football players, and you know, they have an opportunity to make plays. They're going to make them. But the biggest thing we've got to do is we've got to continue to do our jobs and continue to, you know, work at getting better. I mean, we're not even close to where I think we should be or where we can be or where we're headed. But I do like our guys. I think we've got a group of guys that understand what it's going to take. What I really did like, too, is their poise. You know, you're down, you know, 17-0. It'd been easily, you know, now, hey, let's just get our own and we'll go on from here and get ready next week. But no, they didn't. They fought back. They stayed focused. They did their jobs. They went after an opponent and made something happen. And kudos to the guys for doing that.
Hey, Ron, when Deandre Hopkins was traded this offseason, did you have any sense that he was on the market? And then also, just what do you think he does for them and their offense?
No, we had no sense he was on the market. What he does for the offense, well, they give him another playmaker. I mean, they've got a lot of playmakers on that football team, and that's one of the things that, you know, that's out there is here's a guy that has the ability to be explosive, has the ability to make plays. It's obvious based on how many times he was targeted and the ball was thrown to him that Kyler's become very comfortable with him.
Were you surprised that he was traded? Talent like that?
Yeah, just like everybody else. We were all surprised. I mean, you know, here's a talented player that was in, you know, playing for a team that he had played very well for, and they traded him, and you know, but it was a decision that was made, you know, on another team.
Thanks.
Hey, Ron, it's week 2 now of this new practice squad situation. You guys have so far protected the same 3 people from last week. You called Cam Sims up during the game. What are you kind of learning about this new process, and how do you think it's something that you guys can take advantage of going forward?
Well, I think it is a unique tool, and I'll be honest, I hope we can keep this tool going forward, because I appreciate the ability to do that. I like the way it's set up. I like the way that, you know, you can now get have 54. You can now have 28 guys active, based on using an extra offensive lineman. I mean, the things that they did to prepare us and give us an opportunity to play this year, well, I think was brilliant by the NFL and NFLPA. It also creates more opportunities for these guys that are on practice squad to get a chance to be elevated and play and earn a little bit more money. But at the same time, it helps us as a football team, because, you know, we elevated a guy last week that we needed some help at the wide receiver position and on special teams, and Cam was one of our better guys, so we elevated him and gave us a chance to do something with him, and who knows what we'll do this week.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. For you personally, Ron, with the treatment and that, will you have to do anything differently as far as the road game goes?
No. I mean, you know, my anticipation is to be able to you know, take a you know, if I have to, you know, go, again, plan out and do the halftime IV, I'll do it again. But you know, as far as this is concerned, as far as the game's concerned, no, it's pretty much what we'll map out. I'll sit down, I'll talk with Dr. Castellero, I'll talk to Ryan Vermillion, and we'll have a plan going into this weekend.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ron, apologies if you've been asked this question at some point during training camp. I cover the Eagles in Philly and the NFL nationally for AP. And I wanted to ask you about Eric Reid, who posted the other day that he feels like he's still being blackballed by the NFL, kind of like Colin Kaepernick. You brought him into Carolina. He set a couple franchise records last season. Has anyone, any GM or coach, asked you about Eric, his play on the field? Why do you think he doesn't have a job, and what would you tell them if they did ask you about Eric?
Well, nobody's reached out and asked me. I would tell him he's a heck of a teammate. I mean, he came in and the young man did exactly what we asked of him. He was. I mean, he was not an issue. And I will say this too. And he's a young man that really truly helped me to understand the entire new movement that's going on right now. He's a heck of a young man. I'll tell you that much. We're in a fortunate position where we have Landon Collins. So, a guy like Eric Reid wouldn't fit us here. But if we didn't, believe me, I'd call him. I think he's a guy that has the ability to play in this league, and hopefully, if somebody needs a strong safety, he's a guy that they would call.
Got time for 3 more.
Hey, Ron. Workout Wire said you guys had some receivers in earlier this week. Obviously, you called up Cam Sims last week. How do you feel about the receiver group on the active right now? And it looks like you're looking.
Well, they're young, and I like who they are, but they're young. And so, we're just taking a look at guys. We're kicking tires. We're trying to find guys that potentially could be on our practice squad, guys that potentially could grow into receivers as we go forward. It's always good to have a good look at guys, and that's our biggest problem right now is if you really look at it, what we had last week. We got Dontrell Inman, who's really the only veteran I think at 5 years in the league. Now he's played a lot of football because he's been in Canada for a while. Then Terry's a second-year guy. Cam Simmons is a second-year guy. Steven Simmons is a second-year guy. And then we had 2 rookies in AGG and Isaiah up that were both rookies. So, we had 5 guys that were up that I have more playing experience, than they do. I mean, I played 9, and there was only 8 years of playing experience for those 5 young guys. So that's our biggest concern is that we're young at that position.
Thank you.
Ron, do you think going on the road into an empty stadium, will that negate the home field advantage at all, or is just the ordeal of traveling enough to kind of still create a home field advantage for the other team?
Well, I think still the ordeal of traveling helps to create that sense that this is a home field. Different locker room creates a sense that it's a home field. That's the advantage for the other team, and that's about it.
Last one, guys.
Thanks.
Hey, Ron, I don't know if I'm jumping in here. Just curious, it seemed like Chase had much of his success, if not all of his success on Sunday, rushing from the right defensive end spot as opposed to that first drive where he was on the left. Have you noticed any difference, him on one side or the other before Sunday, meaning was that like a tactical type thing or anything?
No, I mean, Chase plays left and right in for us. We don't necessarily say he's a right end or a left end. And I will say this again, if you go back and look at it, that first quarter and a half, nobody had success. But once everybody settled in and started to play, I think, that was a huge positive. So, we'll see how it unfolds this week. I mean, if he starts on the left side, he may have success there and not have success on the right. I think that we may be looking a little bit too far for something on that.
All right.
Okay.